Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good afternoon, Rod. Yeah, I'm well. Here we are on the 7th of July, so 7:07, and it's episode 180, and it's muggy.
Muggy is a good description, yeah. This sort of, I'd call it scattered cloud.
It's hot, but the sun's not really out because it's hiding behind some cloud. That's what it feels like here, and I don't like this weather. I normally get a headache.
Yeah, we had the air show here this weekend, so we had more stuff that you're used to, really, I think, living at the end of a runway. But we had the Red Arrows both days, and we had Typhoons, and we had Battle of Britain fly past, Spitfire, and stuff like that.
So you and I must have seen the Red Arrows on the same day, because they might have flown from you to me, because I was at Silverstone, and they flew over just before the race started.
What time was that?
Which was kind of cool. Circa 2:45.
Right, so maybe they might have stopped to refuel. I guess they got to fill up all those paint pods and things so they can paint the sky up again, haven't they?
Yeah, I've no idea how that all works. Like how long that lasts for, how much fuel do they carry? I don't know.
It's not.
I mean, they literally flew past.
Yeah.
And then went, and they're off somewhere else or going home to have tea.
Right, like a Glastonbury thing where they just flew over the one thing. Whereas they did a full-on display here both days. So they were in Swansea for one, I think. So that probably works out.
Yeah, I guess so. They did you and then came over to my way. So that's quite cool.
Yeah, that was quite cool. So there you go. The Red Arrows transmitted some... It's diesel they put in the air, isn't it? Painted diesel, I think, is what they actually put right on the sky with.
How long's that going to last?
It's not great.
It feels bad, doesn't it?
It does feel great. Maybe that's an urban myth, but I'm pretty sure I read that there's some sort of diesel component to the smoke that they...
Didn't they do something recently when they had Trooping of the Colour and they were running on some biofuel for King Charles?
Well,
Trooping of the Colour is a big event for the King or Queen in London, lots of displays, and that was on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so for the viewers, there is a link to the wiki page, which we should probably put in the show notes. Now we've been distracted talking about the Red Arrows.
To be fair, the viewers may not know what the Red Arrows are. This is the display team, aerobatics display team of the UK.
Of the Royal Air Force.
Of the Royal Air Force, you're right, which is based in the UK.
Which is based in the UK, but to distinguish them from, say, the American Blue Eagles, or I think the Navy have their own display team, and the United States Air Force have their own display team. So this is the display team of the Royal Air Force. I don't know if our Navy have a display team. They fly most...
I don't.
Well, they're going to fly F-35s at some point, aren't they? So, yeah, maybe. In fact...
The Red Arrows, though, are the super famous ones in this country. Obviously, there's others. There's like the Tricolori, which I think are French, and there's the Italian have got some... there's lots.
Yeah, I think most countries with an active air force or military of some sort probably have a display team because it shows how good the pilots are, that kind of stuff, and serves as a recruiting tool. So, you understand why they do it. There you go. The smoke trails left by the team are made by releasing diesel into the exhaust. This vaporizes the hot exhaust and recondenses into very fine droplets. So, yeah, I knew there was diesel involved.
It still doesn't sound good, does it? Like you're just, vaporizing diesel into the air.
What could go wrong?
It just doesn't sound good for the environment, though, in the modern world. But there you go. Anyway, we should get on with the show and dive straight into follow-up.
Let's do some follow-up, yeah. So first off the bat, in our never-ending story of Apple's legal issues, and we've got a couple of legal issues, not just Apple's, to talk about this week. Apple, unsurprisingly, has formally appealed the €500 million DMA fine. They don't think it's fair. The summary of this, and the story is from 9to5Mac from July the 7th at 2 p.m. Pacific time. They think the EU changed the App Store rules so many times that there was no way they could have been compliant with it, is basically the summary of this story. I'm not sure.
Moving goalposts, what we're saying.
That's what we're saying. And without knowing what happens on both sides of these things, it's impossible for us to say if this was actually the case or not. I'm not sure it's the case based on our sort of standpoint. I think the EU said do a thing. Apple did a thing that was nowhere near the spirit of the thing that the EU asked for. And they've moved the goalpost recently in order to try and not get further fines. But I don't think the initial spirit of the law, and that's the problem with the spirit of a law, was what Apple were sort of hitting.
And when Apple first tried to adhere to the DMA, it was all very last minute. Like there wasn't much wiggle room. It's not like they did in plenty of time and gave people time to look at it. It was literally down to the wire that they were going to hit it. So possibly the EU changed goalposts, Apple very late to implement. not great.
Yeah, I think that's fair on both sides, isn't it? The Apple, I'm sure we're hoping this was going to go away. They didn't know that it applied to them. They thought they could continue doing what they were doing, as we've seen continually around the world. I'm sure working with any set of laws when they're not explicit is very difficult. So I have a certain amount of sympathy for Apple there, but what the response to it certainly wasn't straightforward. And I remember the first time this came around, us discussing how complicated it was. Provision of alternative marketplaces. Apple trying to maintain the safety and security of their users, which is their usual go-to within these things, is definitely a part of it. But as we talked about, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, what they released in response to the fine and trying to change that certainly didn't seem any simpler.
No, agreed. It feels far too complicated. I think this is the frustration, isn't it? Apple are going very much by the letter if they can, and it's just complicated and not globally. It just feels the App Store's just got very messy.
It has got very messy, and we've talked to death about whether it's actually as secure as they say it is. What's really the difference between your phone and a computer? You can put your credit card into any scammy website. Your data can appear in a data leak from your grocer, never mind your phone provider. So I think it's a very difficult world into which they're trying to do this. I still get the impression they're trying to hang on to as much control over what happens on the platform as possible. They see every transaction on the platform as belonging to them or originating from them, no matter what the value is brought by external developers or governments or anything within that. So I feel like they're on an uphill battle with the EU at the moment with this.
Yeah, and Apple, you need to move on. And also, when can we get this in the UK, please? We want some of this flexibility in the UK.
Yeah. Apple aren't the only ones, of course. Meta also got a big fine in the EU, and they are also contesting this. They got a €200 million fine, and they're saying their pay or consent thing is unlawful. I hate to say this, I have a little more sympathy for Meta here than I do for Apple, and it's not very often I'll give Meta any sort of mileage at all, but they did
Snap.
Yeah, they did have a model where users could pay and not see advertising in their app, and that seemed like very much within the spirit of the law to me.
Do you know what? A website called planetf1.com. They obviously do F1 news and stuff. They do exactly the same thing. If you allow ads, you can look at it for free. If you disable ads, then you need to pay us some money. And I'm kind of all right with that, if I'm honest. Like, that's fine. They've got to make money to exist and cover their costs and pay their journalists. So I think that's fair.
Yeah, it is hard to argue with. I mean, at the same time, what Meta does with your data, whether it advertises you or not, they're still making money out of it. So they want money both ways. They want money for your eyeballs in the first place, and they want money for the analytics that they get off you interacting with the content on Facebook, be it that with advertising or not. You interacting with other users is quite interesting to them. So yes, they have to make money in order to keep the servers up and the developers paid, and and all the rest of it. Sort out their shareholders at the end of the day. But I have a little more sympathy with this than I do for Apple. I think Facebook or Meta did what was required of them. They made an ad-free version for payment. If you pay, you don't see the ads. YouTube do the same thing. The Verge do the same thing. It's not an uncommon model these days.
No, agreed. I think this is a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on and sticking with various legislations and things around the world, a jury in California has found that at Google, in this case, so we've got the big three so far. We just need a Microsoft story. We've got the quadrifecta that Google must pay California Android smartphone users $314.6 million. This is in relation to phones lying around not doing much, but still sending location data and other sort of interaction data back to Google in the state of California.
Ooh, that's not a good look, is it?
Well, this was a thing. I remember reading about this when it came out several years ago, that some academics at one of the California universities did a sort of bench test on. They installed an Android phone, they just stuck it on the side once they'd put in their user details and left it, didn't interact with it at all. And it was continually transmitting where it was, what it was doing, its battery state, all that kind of stuff back to Google in some form. And that's really not great.
What did Google do with all that data? It's a lot of data, isn't it? Just coming back.
They do. They've got a lot of servers, a lot of smart people, and a lot of analytics to do with it. They're an advertising company. Whatever they collect on what's happening on phones is really important to them. This feels a bit invasive, and I'm not surprised a court has ruled against them, really.
Yeah, I always quite like Apple that they pop up, Do you want to allow this thing to use your location? Do you want to have it all the time? And I think they actually handle that in quite a nice way.
They do, and I guess we could be getting off the specific topic of this story here, but it feels like Apple are on a slippery slope with this kind of stuff. The recent advertising of putting the F1 app into your wallet, the fact that I got served an app this morning for whatever Angry Birds thing is in Apple Arcade. That I don't think I've ever downloaded an Angry Birds game off Apple Arcade. Why are you pushing me that content, Apple? If I want a game, I'll go and look for it. I don't need you serving me adverts.
Yeah, I concur with you on this statement. I think they are pushing the boundary. Well, they've exceeded the boundaries of what's acceptable. They wouldn't let others do it. Why are they doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's
not good.
It's quite two-faced, for want of a better word, of them, that all this stuff is ongoing, and they're doing this, and it's not fair, Apple. It's against the spirit of everything that you think you're meant to be.
Yeah, agreed. But it's a lot of money Google are going to pay out, and if this is just in California, surely the other states would follow.
Yeah, it's hard to say with some states, red states, blue states. California, I think, isn't California's gross domestic product similar to like the sixth or seventh nation in the world, just as a state in and of itself? It's on a very different level to other states in America.
I'm sure it is, but I'll take your word for it. I don't know.
Yeah. Sticking with the United States for a little bit, and I guess in a little bit of news not many people might have seen coming, is apparently Donald Trump is looking into deporting Elon Musk based on some of his comments and the fact that he's spun up a new political party over the last or attempting to spin up a new political party. Who'd have thought two people in this position with lots of money and lots of power would start fighting like this after a period of time?
Yeah, they don't seem to get along, do they? The honeymoon is well and truly over. Elon was like the best thing since sliced bread. Elon helped Trump get into office, and now it's kind of careful what you wish for, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this has got to be slightly concerning for Elon. He's the richest man in the world. He helped Trump get into office. He chucked lots of money around to get, as you say, this is not a thing. But he is an immigrant to the United States. He's South African by birth, as we've talked about on this podcast and on others. But, within this, what they call truths, whatever they come from, Truth Social, Elon would have to close up shop, go back to South Africa. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production. That's his core businesses there.
That can't be good for America, though, can it?
Well, it can't be good for America, and I'm pretty sure some of the government departments, while he was in Doge, again, no conflict of interest there, he was moving them to Starlink for their broadband and all that kind of stuff. So
I don't even know what you say to that. Like, it's just, I don't know, it feels like a very slippery slope and very, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back.
It's a very public spat, isn't it? You've got, this going on with the man that owns the bigger platform-ish, X, and then you've got the President of the United States on the other. And I wish it would be easy to sit back and eat popcorn and just enjoy what's going on, but this is the planet they're playing with in a lot of cases here, and it's not funny at all.
Yeah, there could be some massive repercussions.
Yeah, there absolutely could. And for all our criticism of both parties in this, neither of them come out of it looking particularly great.
These sorts of things should be happening in public, should they?
Absolutely not. Absolutely. You would hope people would be grown up enough at these levels that they, as you say, they wouldn't behave like toddlers in the schoolyard.
I completely agree.
Something else we agree on, because we kind of talked about it a minute ago, is the ongoing antitrust stuff that Apple are facing in other countries. In this case, it's Brazil. We've reported on this a couple of times in the podcast, and this is a story in 9to5Mac from July the 1st, that Brazil, whose antitrust watchdog said Apple appealed against the penalties that the antitrust watchdog was putting against them. They haven't been granted that right to appeal. So, yeah, I think this is quite a big deal. This is specifically about app payment developments in the country of Brazil, and this was the imposition of an exclusive use of its payment system by app developers and the restriction of the distribution and commercialization of third-party digital services. So this will boil back to link outs from apps and Apple taking a commission on every single interaction that happens. And Brazil have said that's unlawful within the country of Brazil, which is what we've seen in the United States, certainly with those link outs and things like that and other payment platforms coming in. And again, I think this is only right and proper.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I'm completely with you.
Yeah, it's some of these, they're hard to discuss some of these topics because we have been for a very long time now, and it's not a surprise that, and this dominoes are going to fall here for Apple and for Google and for Microsoft, but specifically for Apple in this case, that once one country sees what's possible, as you've just said with the EU and the DMA, And we saw it in the Netherlands with the dating apps, and we've seen it in the United States, and we'll continue to see it around the world. Other countries will follow suit because they can see it can happen. And their own internal companies, I think the company is called Mercado Libre in this case, should receive some sort of preferential treatment within that country because it belongs to that country. In the same way, the United States will prioritize most of its technology providers first. You would expect the EU to do the same. You would expect the UK to do the same. You would expect Brazil to do the same in Korea. So again, hard to discuss really.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you here. I do wonder at what point, is it going to take up to 51% of the countries to go, Apple, we want what you've done in the other countries. And then they just go, actually, we should turn off for everybody because that seems to be the way we're going.
But there'll be like 150 countries that are individually fighting Apple on this, and they'll just fight every single one because they've got all the money in the world.
Fair.
You could see it.
Yeah, you could see it. But now, agree with Brazil. It's interesting. Brazil really, they've been in the news a lot lately.
They have.
Fair play to them.
Yeah.
For good reasons.
100% agree. You're a Pixelmator Pro user, I think, Chris?
I like me a bit of Pixelmator.
Do you want to tell us about the Apple Intelligence features then?
Yeah, so I was a bit less than excited, I think, when I saw this pop up. So I love Pixelmator. Pixelmator was an app that came out, I think, on the iPad and then the Mac and the phone, and then they've done Pixelmator Pro, and basically it's Photoshop. They've done a great job of Photoshop. They also do Photomator, which is largely for editing photos. Apple bought the company, and this is the first real update we've had since Apple bought them. And basically now you can get image playgrounds and Apple Intelligence writing tools within the app. Brilliant. It's interesting because I thought Apple could go two ways with this acquisition. One, they could keep them as separate apps over here, or two, they start folding it into Apple's ecosystem. It feels like they're keeping it as a separate app. I don't know what they haven't really said what they're going to do. There's obviously something in there. But in a way, I hope they do. I like Pixelmator Pro. I think it's a really good app. Interestingly, you just have to pay for it. It's still 50 quid. I'm surprised they're not making it free because Apple often do that when they buy these things. So, yeah, curious to know what's going to happen. But it's good to see they're still doing stuff with it and not just bought it and taken the talent and left it. So hopefully they're going to carry on.
I think we speculated that Apple was positioning themselves to have quite a lot of that sort of creative impetus that an Adobe have, where you have Photoshop and Premiere and I think Audition is the name of their, maybe I've got that wrong, but their audio editor as well. So you'd have a whole suite of tools for the digital creation of podcasts, movies, TikTok content, all that kind of stuff that Adobe have a one-stop shop for. And Pixelmator would seem to be a core component in that, where you could design, say, motion graphic layers within Pixelmator. You could export it to Motion. You could do something in Motion, put it in a Final Cut Pro, and then publish it and do your soundtrack in Logic. They don't really seem to be going there. I mean, just giving you the ability to do image playground and writing tools, really? I mean, is that something that image editors are really crying out for? Is to sort out your copy in an image editor?
It's a bit of an odd one, but maybe they're just trying to link everything up so that all their apps are on point with AI stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to see that it's being updated. I'm quite happy for them to keep them as separate apps. I think if you look at Beats, they've managed Beats very well in terms of headphones and what they offer. I'm trying to think of other software purchases where they haven't just destroyed them. Shortcuts brings to...
Shortcuts?
The team left. The team behind Shortcuts left. If you look at what they've gone off to do with Sky, I'd say that Shortcuts team were constrained by Apple quite heavily rather than...
I think they were going to leave because they've run a small software company. They've been bought. They've waited for their earn out. They have to stay a couple of years to get all the money. They've done that. They've then gone and maybe they like the small company culture. It does feel like Apple will end up buying them again, though. So I wouldn't worry too much.
I'm not worried. I just wonder about. There is corporate culture, isn't there? Like you say, if you are a part of, you like that sort of cut and thrust of a startup versus the very established and probably very staid way that Apple manages software products, as we see with evolution, not revolution these days. Possibly, but this feels like the most minor of minor AI updates to Pixelmator anyway.
Yeah, it's a little anticlimactic, but at least they haven't just trashed it or done nothing, so it probably gets a thumbs up.
Sherlocked.
Quite.
briefly back to legal cases before we move on to the news, and this is just an update really. We reported probably about a year ago that the Department of Justice was looking into Apple as a monopoly. Apple appealed that to say that they shouldn't be treated as a monopoly because the law was inappropriate for the various things that have been brought. Anyway, the Department of Justice have refused that, and the case will continue. So Apple is still being investigated for antitrust, as the iPhone is being a monopoly in the United States of America, and I guess that's not really a surprise.
As a surprise to nobody, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Apple isn't always the Donald's favourite company, favourite person, is he? Despite having put into all the bits and pieces. So it doesn't surprise me that Meta and Apple and Tesla, it would seem, are still under the cosh when it comes to it, even though it's a different president that this legislation started under. I think it'll continue.
Yeah, agreed.
Shall we do some news?
Let's do the news.
Which we don't have many stories, actually. You can tell we're into the quiet summer, so this isn't scraping the bottom of the barrel. I just thought it was an interesting thing that popped up on Mastodon that was worth talking about. We already talked about Adobe having a complete suite of things. And I think probably about 18 months ago, we talked about a lot of fallout for Adobe, who locked a load of creative types like Duncan Jones, the creator of the Moon film and others, being locked away from their content, not being able to get into their editing for everything that was stored in the cloud because of a license change. I think it was.
Yeah, I think you're correct there.
So
terms of
service. Well, apparently now, if you store your PDFs in Adobe's Creative Cloud, if you enable generative AI features in Acrobat, it's actually summarizing all the text that's within your document. So if you've signed a non-disclosure agreement, it's potentially taking all the text of the non-disclosure agreement and doing AI stuff on it, which seems wrong.
Maybe this is why Apple have launched Preview on the iPad and the phone, so you don't need to have Acrobat and you can use your local AI in Apple Intelligence to do this. Yeah,
not everybody's got an iPhone or an iPad or a Mac.
Fair. And Apple Intelligence may not be turned on because it's not that great. No, it is interesting that they're going to process in the cloud. It doesn't say, though, that they're going to suck all your data out of you, though.
Well, no, but
it doesn't look good.
In the same way that LLMs need to be taught, exposed to a lot of learning material for them to have any use at all, there's probably quite a lot of legal learning material contained within things like non-disclosure agreements, with specific reference to IP that you shouldn't be mentioning and all the rest of it. So part of the point of a non-disclosure agreement is you don't talk about the non-disclosure agreement. Or you can say I signed it, but not what the content of it was. I mean, that's the point. If you're saying these are the things I'm not allowed to talk about by signing a non-disclosure agreement, you're kind of breaching the non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's not great though, is it? I think this does feel the way we are going with a lot of AI things, though. You have to give up something to have it, and you're giving up your data predominantly.
As with so many AI things, who is this helping? I don't feel this is helping the end user.
Is this helping the end user? No, probably not. Well, it may do, because they may benefit from the models as they expand and learn more.
Maybe. I mean, it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it, to say,
I'm
going to read your very sensitive documents now, because in 3 years it's going to help me summarize your very sensitive documents. You shouldn't be signing a document like this if you don't understand what it is.
True. If you got legal documents before, they're horrible, like software agreements.
Totally.
But then you get advice on it. That's what you pay the advisors.
So in this country, we'd have solicitors or lawyers to look at this stuff for us and say, you can't sign this because X, because a lawyer can bury anything inside of a clause, and that's why you need a lawyer to unentangle what the first lawyer said.
Let's have lawyer chats.
In my experience, and us as technical people or academics just need to be told that it's safe, unsafe, or what it means for us to say, or for your business, what you're committing to. So it's a lawyer that needs to understand this, not an LLM. So the purpose of this is so a lawyer can point at it and go, yep, I don't need to read this document so carefully because it's disentangled by an LLM. That doesn't fill me with faith for the future.
No, it's not good, is it? Who knows what people might sign up for?
It's just, I'm going to say the word again, it's just the enshittification of yet another profession. And we've already seen, legal cases where people have presented ChatGPT summaries that cite incorrect law. This stuff doesn't help.
Agreed. Completely agree with you.
So it's just another sign of the impending tech-pocalypse, I think.
Tech-pocalypse. Like, again, there are other PDF tools out there, people. You don't have to use this.
You absolutely don't. Let's talk about something fun. So it leaked this last week on July the 3rd that There were some identifiers for Apple upcoming Mac devices, and it's always quite exciting to see what we've got coming up for us in the next few months.
Yeah, it looks cool, this list. If you go down slightly, potentially we're going to have an M5 MacBook Pro 14 and 16 inch size.
Which let's preface this by saying some of these aren't a surprise. These are things we'd expect to see anyway, given this time of year. And
yeah, that's fair. So there's rumour the M5 is going to be coming out later this year after, I guess, the next version of macOS 26 ships, Tahoe, and it will probably come with this new hardware, usually around October time.
Yeah, so that's what we're thinking. We're thinking new MacBook Pros. There's a hint of a new M5 iMac. Doesn't give a size, so I suspect it's still the 22-inch variant that we've seen the last few years. 24-inch variant, which I guess is just the bog standard M5 chip. There's unlikely to see a Pro in there. You don't now, do you? It's just a standard M4 now.
Yeah, it's just M4.
Yep. M5 Pro Mac Mini, which might be a surprise, I guess, maybe once you've got that sort of form factor. You and I both have Mac Mini M4s. We're both quite happy with them. I think we've both got the Pro, in fact.
We have.
Great little computer. If it's no hassle to sling in the newest chip, then do so. Great.
Yep, that feels like, that's fine, isn't it?
So that's okay. M5 MacBook Air on the 13 and 15-inch size, fine. The next one surprised me. New Mac Pro.
Me too. I'm not that surprised. I think they would do something with it, but it's got to be a dying machine, hasn't it, the Mac Pro now? Because it's so expensive and not much different to the Mac Studio.
And I still don't understand what purpose it serves. Because you can't put graphics cards in it. I guess you could put some audio cards in it if you're in a studio. But I was listening to some chat on ATP this week, and they say lots of studios require FireWire for a lot of their interconnect boards and all the rest of it. So that's going away in Tahoe. You'll need to install Tahoe for this new Mac Pro to work. So your FireWire adapters aren't going to work on it. So what's the point?
Yeah, the small use cases just got smaller.
Yeah, it's a bit.
I don't know.
And the current Mac Pro is no better than the Mac Studio as far as I can see. So it's a computer that's on a watch list.
Yeah, it feels like it's a product in their lineup. I don't know, but maybe they are saying enough to warrant giving it a slight refresh. It's probably going to be a nothing refresh.
Yeah, I don't get it. They should just kill the computer off at this point. The second there aren't relevant cards to stick inside of it for a mainstream market. I mean, there's a certain amount of sense in selling like a £20,000 computer to a minority market, but I wonder how minority that is.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. So it's sad, but it is what it is.
You and I both had Mac Pros and loved them.
Yeah, well, the Mac Studio has replaced it, though, isn't
it?
That's the device most people should
get. Two Mac Studio models, likely the Max and Ultra. Now, if memory serves, you can't get an M4 Max or Ultra. You can only get an M3.
You can get an M4 Max and an M3 Ultra.
Yeah. So there was a problem with the highest end chip. So there is no M series chip ascribed to these. So maybe we'll see M4 Max and Ultras. I don't know.
It feels like this could be next year's announcement because they've only just done their studio, so
yeah,
I think we have to wait and see.
Yep, and it's a shame because it's a good computer. I got to think for 60% of users or something like that the Mini actually replaced a lot of people's Mac Studios for those that wanted a high-end chip.
I think that's fair. I think the Mini is a fantastic device. It does get expensive though once you start tweaking it, which you and I have both done. And should we have got a studio? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. At the time it came out, we'd have had to go back a chip generation though.
But I like the Mini form factor. I think it's awesome.
I do too. And then last but not least, we're going to save for the main show, but there could be a new MacBook as well.
Yeah, new MacBook. So that sounds cool. So yeah, lots happening in Apple Mac world, which is good because I always felt like the Mac was the lesser sibling, but actually they seem to be giving it a lot of attention lately, which is really good.
There's definitely been something more of a focus on the Mac. I think they realise how important it is, and it grows in market share in kind of spurts, but it does grow in market share.
People like Macs.
I like Macs a lot.
Yep.
Something else for us to talk about, or we have talked about recently, has been Apple's woeful efforts to improve Siri. Basically, they never have since it launched. I'm sure they would dispute that, but I don't think anybody can say that Siri is a good voice assistant. Or
I'm sure they've improved it in the background, but most users wouldn't really notice what those differences are. And B, I don't think, like you've just said, it's never been that great.
It amuses me that 95's image for this is a dumpster fire.
It's fair, isn't it? The Siri's they need to change the name. They need to completely redo it. but yet they seem to be not. They've never really faced into it.
So what this is, them attempting to address this is apparently that they may well ditch their internal models to make use of something from either OpenAI or Anthropic. Apparently, Anthropic's model is particularly good when it comes to these voice assistants rather than OpenAI's. But reading this article from 9to5Mac, which came out on the 30th of June, Anthropic want billions. I kind of want to do the Dr. Evil thing when I say that, to actually host this for Apple. OpenAI, I think, are more open to just being on the platform as much as anything else, with less money changing hands. What this article goes into, though, that I quite like is what effect is this having on the morale of the teams working on Apple Intelligence in these models?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you're basically going, you guys haven't done it, so we're just going to go buy it off the shelf and spend some of our war chest on it. But the problem is, Siri, I'd hate to be working on Siri. It's got such a bad name. You know, it's not good, is it? And they've taken so long to do anything with it. It feels like they should go do this and then either buy the company or do something in the background and just use this as a stepping block. But they need to do something because it's woeful where Siri's at. It's embarrassingly woeful.
Yeah. Part of the problem with this is that you're going to want to use Apple's private cloud compute. I think I've got the right term for that. They're sort of the secure computing environment that's entirely private to your instance. That all runs on M2 Macs. Are M2 Macs going to be suitable to run Anthropic or OpenAI's latest model in order to power Siri?
Probably not for very long. And if you're going to partner with somebody like Anthropic, what happens if they have problems? What happens if they go wrong? What happens if they release an update? It feels like this is something you're going to want to own. Or do you not do this and you allow people to bolt into other providers? I don't know.
It's got to power Siri, though. It's got to be able to do the basic things. And, you know, if you say ChatGPT version 5 OL or whatever the next thing that comes along is, maybe it doesn't do this. Maybe it does something different. Maybe it doesn't know what Siri is. Maybe it doesn't respond to set a timer or a calendar. There's some fundamentals that just need to work. It's funny. If you go back and switch off Siri, you get the old voice assistant from years and years ago. And it's super reliable at setting timers and things like that.
Because it had a very constrained set of functionality. And I used to quite like that one. I used to turn off Siri because they used to do that locally, where Siri always went to the cloud. And obviously when you were commuting and you were, trying to use a voice assistant, it was quite hard to get it to be reliable. I think Apple's lack of investment in any of this has backed them right into a corner, and they are now paying the price.
It really has, and we haven't reported on it, and it hasn't really seemed the place to do so. But they've released a couple of papers about how unreliable Apple have released a couple of papers about how unreliable LLMs are as well. So I think that sort of internal skepticism about these things fuels that, doesn't it? On one hand, they're trying to push forward with LLM and AI based things, and on another, they're a bit like, yeah, but they're not very good, are they?
Do you think they're trying to release these papers to bring down the buy price of one of these companies or the license costs?
I couldn't comment on that, but you've given me a great segue. Speaking of papers, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services in the United States, so he's like their Secretary of Health, basically, has decided that lots of American governmental agencies, such as NASA and others, shouldn't have subscriptions to the journal Nature. Now, that might not mean much to many people, but I'm an academic. Nature is probably in the top 2 journals of where you'd want to have a paper published in your career.
Okay, I don't know, what is Nature? Tell me what Nature is.
So Nature is so a journal, for those that don't know, will review peer-reviewed science for a scientist or to see if what they're saying is appropriate. Journals have a thing called an impact factor, which is the better your work, the higher the impact factor of the journal. So in my field, which is medicine, the highest impact factor journals are things like The Lancet, which is looks at medicine, surgery, healthcare at a very high level, massive impact factor. So if you're Einstein and you want your journal to be seen by the widest possible range of readers who may be experts in physics, but more likely are just experts in science in general, you go for a high impact factor journal, and Nature's up there. It's about the highest. World-changing science should be published in Nature. It's a big deal if it's in Nature.
Okay, I just hadn't heard of it, and so I was...
That's fair enough. So again, in my field, it's things like The Lancet, JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, The Lancet, the BMJ. They're all high impact factor journals, but every field of science has their own big big players in the field, but up above them all is Nature. If you have a publication in Nature, you're doing incredibly well. So the point is, you read about big changes in science in a peer-reviewed journal from Nature. So cancelling it from a governmental or departmental point means you can't read those things. And these days, it's typically a subscription to Nature's website rather than the paper magazine that comes out, the paper journal that comes out. But he's cancelled all that for National Institutes of Health, NASA, other services like that, because it's junk science. And frankly, who is he to judge?
Feels like they're just nickel and diming a little bit over there. I don't know, but they seem on a real cost crisis at the moment, and this feels like very small fry in the scheme of things.
But again, the repercussions of this is if you're not subscribing, you're not going to publish to them either. So that means that your science isn't considered to be good enough to be in JAMA or NASA or Lancet or other journals like that. And it blows my mind that an agency such as NASA, that has been responsible for so many developments in the world of astronautics, space exploration, engineering, discoveries, in all manner of ways. Think of the science they do in the International Space Station. None of that is going to potentially appear in the journal Nature or the Lancet.
It's mad, isn't it?
He accused the journals of collectively being a vessel for pharmaceutical propaganda, which in some cases may well be true. Let's face it, lots of money goes to pharmaceutical companies. They make drugs. To show that drugs work, you publish them in peer-reviewed journals. That's just what happens. And there is an argument that all scientific publishing is bunk, but this is the system that we've got that moves the field forward. So, frankly, just you cancelling it isn't going to stop the rest of the world doing this.
No, that is true. Maybe the rest will follow in their wake, but I don't know. It feels crazy, doesn't it? You hope not, by the way. But I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of very strange decisions going on at the moment.
I don't understand this one at all. I guess it might show that his position on vaccines is just absolutely wrong, but might become extremely political, and I'm going to move on very quickly and stick with something extremely political. At the top of the App Store is an app in America, is an app called ICEBlock. So ICE is the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency. I think that's what it stands for. Who ICE are the agency that gets sent around to repatriate migrants or lock them up in various camps until they get deported back to the countries in which they came from which they came, unless they're American citizens or something like that. So they don't tend to have warrants and tend to grab people out on the street, as I understand it. So they watch for immigrants or when they're in the workplace or something like that. And this is an app that will warn people if ICE is in their area. Obviously, the government of the United States don't like this at all, but it's just fascinating to me that it was the most downloaded app in the App Store a couple of weeks ago.
How do you know whether people are in the area?
It's crowd surfing. They look out. They look out. There's reports made, and if they see a high incidence of reports in that area, I think they get an alert on their phone if they happen to be in the same sort of area.
Hence why it says see something, tap something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think ICE agents are not. Once upon a time they'd have been with body armor and all that kind of stuff with ICE written across the back and a baseball cap and with their ID on, whereas now they go around masked with no ID, just with ICE on their back. They don't want to be sort of seen. So they move very quickly and deport people because that's the current approach to immigration within the United States. So I just think it's fascinating that this has become the top downloaded app in the App Store.
Wow, okay, yeah, I didn't expect that at all.
There you go. So let's leave some political stuff behind us and go back to a bit of legal stuff, and then we can talk about some fun things again. Last but not least, we know about the antitrust work that's going on against Apple and various legislative things around the world. This is just to say that Proton, who's our email provider, full disclosure, has also joined this antitrust suit that wants to open up the App Store to all providers without sort of all the limits and policing that Apple put in place.
Yeah, interesting that Proton are weighing in on this one.
So we talked about this before. David Heinemeier Hansen, the email provider, Hello Mail, is also part of this app as well.
Hey,
not hello. Yeah.
Close. It was hey,
hello, hey, close but no cigar. So yeah, it's another company with a lot of money that has a certain amount of reputation that are also lining up against Apple. At some point, surely Apple's going to go, hang on, we're the only people on this side of the street. Us and Google.
Are they though? Are they? I mean, this is just Apple's day to day now, isn't it? Can you imagine how many court cases they've got on at any one given moment?
I wonder if their legal department outweighs their tech and development department at this point.
That would be a sad, sad day.
It would be an extremely sad day. Should we talk about some fun stuff, or have I missed anything?
Yes, let's do some fun stuff.
Let's do some media. So, first story in media. Did you ever watch the film The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Arnie Schwarzenegger. I have seen The Running Man.
Did you know they were doing a remake of it?
I didn't, and I've just seen it says Edgar Wright.
And that is exactly where they got me. So The Running Man, for those that don't know, is a very schlocky late 80s action science fiction movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger doing all of the things you'd expect him to do. There were explosions, ridiculous setups, and I think he even says, "I'll be back" at some point.
Wasn't it a game show?
Yeah.
And you had to run.
Yeah.
You know, a super fit person, you had to run away.
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's based on a Stephen King novel, a very short Stephen King novel, as a couple of things that were adapted at that point were.
I didn't know that.
Yep, as was The Lawnmower Man. It was a Stephen King novel that was adapted as well. An early example of very bad CGI in the movies. Anyway, the original Running Man was sort of set in a dystopian state where you had a very fascist government in charge and everything was getting more expensive, and I don't think I need to draw very many more parallels to what's actually happening in the United States at the moment. But this is retelling that story from a game show where he needs to escape from the media for 30 days or he could be shot, and I think there's some sort of tax break or money or something involved for him. But the crucial piece of information is it's directed by Edgar Wright.
Yeah, which is cool. I love Edgar Wright movies. He's obviously did Baby Driver recently. He's done the Cornetto trilogy. He's a fantastic director. You're going to tell me he did the film you've seen that I haven't.
Scott Pilgrim.
Thank you, Scott Pilgrim. Oh, mine was going back. I'm surprised they've got Glenn Powell doing this. He was recently in Twisters, the sequel to Twister, or retelling a Twister. I'm curious to see what he's going to be like in it. So, but I would definitely watch this.
I wonder if we'll get an Arnie cameo. That's certainly Josh Brolin that's in the freeze frame I've put up for those that are watching. So I'm super excited about this. Edgar Wright has a great sense of music, timing, editing. I'll watch him do almost anything. Yeah,
I completely agree with you. I think he's fantastic. Do you know what? If they got Arnie in it just for a very minor cameo role, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the original Running Man movie, but I'm super excited for this, and it's not often I'm keen for a remake.
No, agreed. I think this could be cool. I'm looking forward to it.
Watched a couple of films over the last couple of days, which I probably think are worth highlighting, because one of them, in complete contrast to the second film I'm going to talk about, was The Remains of the Day. This is a Merchant Ivory film from 1993, starring Emma Thompson and Anthony Hopkins. There's a couple of other cameos from less well-known actors at that point. Hugh Grant pops up in it. Lena Headey, who went on to be Cersei in the Game of Thrones films, pops up in them in a very minor role. What a terrifically moving film. I was really blown away by it.
Okay, I've never heard of this film.
So the background to it is, this is leading up to the Second World War, and he's the manservant butler of a very grand house for a lord. And it's based on a true story. And the Lord, whose name escapes me just for a minute, Lord Darlington, is an appeaser of the German state in the late 1930s, mid-1930s, and actually kind of becomes a supporter by the end of it for everything he's trying to do. He felt that the Treaty of Versailles treated the Germans too harshly. I think he was involved with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles because he was fighting in the First World War in some capacity. Felt it had been too harsh, and that's what had repressed Germany effectively, and would do anything to ensure that Germany was able to rise again, and thought that this Adolf Hitler fellow was a very sensible, reasonable man who should be accounted for. And so all this diplomacy is going on in the background, while you've got the butler kind of making excuses for his employers because all he wants to be is the best of what he is. And it's not quite a romance, but it's close to being a romance between him and the housekeeper. And just everything is beautifully played. It looks fantastic. It's a bit long. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes. But what a terrific film, and a masterclass in acting by Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson.
Okay. Well, I'm a little interested. I will put it on the list.
Yeah, so the tomato ratings are very good. 96% critics, 90% by the public. And again, it's not a film I'd have watched when I was 18 or 19, but I think I'm quite interested in that period of history, and this just sets it off beautifully. And the human side of it is just so well done.
Okay, I've made a note. It sounds quite interesting.
It's very interesting. And then in complete contrast to that, on the same evening, I watched on Amazon Prime Warfare. So I'm a big fan of Alex Garland, in as much as I really like the Dredd film. I really like a couple of the other things that he'd done in the past. Less keen on Civil War. I think we talked about that on the podcast as well. So this is Warfare, which is basically a SEAL unit in Iraq in the 90s who get pinned down in one house, and it's the story of them overnight about what happens to them. Now, it's interesting looking at the audience's response to this, because it's either the greatest film you've ever seen, the greatest war film you've ever seen, or one of the worst you've ever seen. And I'm really not sure where to place myself on this, because I think as a anti-war statement, it would be hard to come across anything as powerful as why anybody would want to put themselves in that kind of situation. It is completely... So I don't want to knock the bravery, because again, it's a true story. The bravery of the men involved or the people on the other side of it who were fighting for their country at that time against what they thought were United States invaders. Both sides of that are stark and quite well versed. It's obviously from the American perspective, this, but at the same time, it takes 1 hour and 35 minutes to tell a story that I think has been done very well in other places. I think Black Hawk Down did it quite well. I think Saving Private Ryan has done it, to put you in the horror of war and the sort of disposability of human life, for want of a better thing, has been done. And the cast are amazing. It's got Will Poulter in it. It's got Cosmo Jarvis in it, who is terrific in Shogun. So it as a piece of cinema, I think it fails to land a little bit. But as an anti-war movie, that's, you know, I'm sure if you were a veteran and you watched it, you'd probably get a PTSD, you'd get a flashback, because I can't. It's that, like that first 5 minutes in Saving Private Ryan when the action starts happening, you're like, this is just the worst thing I've ever seen. So I guess from that point of view, it is a success, but it's not an easy watch, and it's not a 5-star movie for me.
Scored very highly though. It's got a 93% reviewer and a 93% watcher score. So it's amazing. A, they're the same, and B, they're so high. So it's obviously well regarded.
Yeah, and I see it. As with Civil War, I see it, but it just leaves me a little bit cold. I think, I don't know what it is about it, and I say this as a Garland fan, but I thought Mark Kermode's review, I say this as a compliment and not as a criticism. I wanted it to end. And
wow.
And that's, he liked the film.
Yeah, he said a compliment.
It's grueling.
Okay. I'm not sure. I generally need to watch upbeat films. I don't need a downer.
It's if you ever wanted to stop your kids joining the army, I'd show them it.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I'll keep that in mind should that ever happen.
Keep it in mind. You've got The Gold.
Yeah, I'm going to go on slightly different tack. I've put The Gold in. So there's 2 seasons of The Gold. We did briefly discuss season 1 ages ago when I watched that. So it's on BBC iPlayer here in the UK. And it's all about Brinks-Mac gold robbery, which happened like in the late 80s. And they reckon that, nearly all bits of gold sold in the UK in the 90s had some form of Brinks-Mac gold in it, because they never got the gold back. And then this is season 2, where they're just following up on some of the people they never caught. I'm only partway through it, but it's just really well done. And it's got Hugh Bonneville in it, and he plays the office, the governor in the Met that's trying to get hold of the criminals. It's just quite a good follow up. Just enjoying it. If you've enjoyed the first season, the second one's worth a watch. But it's quite a story. The amount of gold they stole, and half of it never got recovered. Basically,
it's not something I know anything about. It sounds quite interesting. I think somebody else has recommended this to me recently. I can't think who. Yeah, Hugh Bonneville, Dominic Cooper, who's also very watchable, and of course Jack Lowden's in it too. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. So would recommend, and it's got good scores. It's 88%. Watcher score, which I think is pretty good.
Fair enough. You're going to tell us about another Glastonbury act. So this didn't feature in last week's show.
I don't think it did feature in last week, because I don't think I'd watched it by then. But I've gone and watched Pulp at Glastonbury. It's just so good. If anybody likes Pulp, I'd go and watch it. It's an hour of your life. The Red Arrows make a surprise appearance at the end. Jarvis is watching. He's looking at his clock to make sure he finishes on time. But no, it's just really good. Great coverage from the BBC. And if you like Pulp, worth watching.
I saw Common People, which is when the Red Arrows flew over, I think. So I saw them do that. I didn't watch the whole set. Did we
that was the last track I think they did.
Did we talk about Peter Capaldi? I think we did talk about Peter Capaldi.
I can't remember. I think we might have done, because he struggled 2 years ago when he was there in 23.
No, we're not talking about Lewis Capaldi. We're talking about Peter Capaldi.
Sorry, I've getting confused by Capaldis. It's such an unusual name as well.
Well, they're related, so...
Yeah, he's like Uncle
Yeah.
Second Removed or something. I read somewhere.
Peter Capaldi did a track with Franz Ferdinand. It's worth a watch.
Oh, no, we didn't talk about it, and I didn't know that. I do want to go watch the Franz Ferdinand segment, actually.
Go and watch Take Me Out, where they get Peter Capaldi up, and it's terrific. And he looks, I'm just going to say it, he looks sexy as hell, Peter Capaldi, when they bring him out there. It was great.
He's got to be getting on now, surely. I have no idea.
Well,
what a track, Take Me Out. That's a good track.
Yep. Neither of us have any games to talk about, Chris.
No, I don't really know where the week. I had a really busy week last week. Lots of meetings, and I just didn't get anything in last week.
Okay, so just because of that, we'll do one last story in media, and then we'll go straight onto the main show.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen this in your Apple Music, but Apple Music have launched a replay all time, which is instead of doing it year by year, they will now give you all the songs you've listened to going back to whenever you start subscribing to Apple Music.
Didn't it do this anyway?
No.
I've struggled with Apple Music. Some of the stuff that they seem to shout about feels like, wasn't this there already?
I'm struggling with Apple Music because using it on Tahoe on my work machine is not going well.
Oh, okay. I think on Tahoe I've quite enjoyed it because it's like my iPad.
I don't like the lozenge at the bottom for the play and pause. I find it doesn't always respond to keyboard input, even when it is the frontmost application. So you hit the space bar to pause it, and it doesn't.
Yeah, that's annoying.
I find the text hard to read with track playing in the background. I genuinely don't think it's a particularly well-written app, and I think that they need to sort out the transparencies, which, it's Monday today. Maybe we'll get a beta later on, which will hopefully update some of this stuff. But Apple Music is a big fail, in the same way Safari is a big fail for me because of the dominant background colors in the app. But it's interesting that they're actually showing something a bit different in Apple Music.
It's good they're bringing features to it. We are a month into the iOS 26 beta cycle. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to some updates. I think the big gradients at the bottom of things, where they've got toolbars on top of things and then a gradient to blur it all out, that's annoying. I don't know. I think they're trying to make everything transparent when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, it's art for art's sake slightly, isn't it?
A little bit. There are some good looking bits, but that bit is frustrating to me.
Should we do a main show?
Let's do it.
So we talked about this a little bit in advance, that there was a rumour, or there is a rumour, that Apple are going to produce a new, cheaper MacBook. And I say MacBook deliberately, not MacBook Air or MacBook Pro. This is a potential laptop with only USB-C, no Thunderbolt, powered by an A18, or is it an A19? I'm looking. What is it?
It says A18.
Powered by an A18 Pro chip, which is the phone you and I have, the chip you and I have in our phones. I think it's not this generation's phone; it's last generation's chip.
No, I've got an A17 Pro.
All right, so it is this generation. So this makes.
I think it's the current 16. I was just looking while you were talking. I think it's the current generation chip.
So it's the current generation phone chip that would potentially powering this. Now, we talked about this about 18 months ago. I think there was a rumor Apple were going to drop a lower priced Chromebook, effectively, sort of variant of the MacBook, and it went away. And I think we at that point went, yeah, they're never going to produce a cheaper laptop, but it seems to be back.
It does seem to be back. And when I first heard about this, I thought, why would they put a phone chip in a MacBook? And then I thought a little bit more about it, and I thought, well, actually, I think it kind of makes sense. And the reason I think it makes sense is because I've got the M4 MacBook Air, which is the slowest laptop that you can buy. The thing's amazing. It's fantastic. It's so good. It's so fast. And actually, for a lot of people, it's probably too fast. They don't need it. So I think this could work because I think the M4 chip is so good for everybody that actually they probably could do a slightly cheaper one. If they still maintain good RAM in it. But it's that slightly lower end to bring the price point down for people that can't afford the $999. If they could get something in at the, I don't know what the price point would be, but say $799, $650. Rods are not in for the people listening. Then there is a market for that, and I think if they just took that and stuck it in the Air case maybe, or a slightly smaller case, and called it the MacBook, I think that's worth doing.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I feel the same as you do, that I think a cheaper Mac is not a bad thing. I wonder if Apple are looking around and going, oh God, tariffs, we are going to need something we can really sort of pare down to a price. So if the MacBook Air becomes $11.99, $12.99 based on tariffs at some point, that there is something cheaper in the lineup that they can do. And they've got lots of parts that they could make to a cheaper cost. The A18 is going to be made at scale because it's in phones. They'll move on to the next generation of chips, so they'll have quite a cheap process that they can produce these things on. It's probably not a million miles between an A18 and an M4, because let's face it, they're based on more or less the same underlying technologies anyway, made at the same sort of economies of scale to the same process. So I think that's good. I loved my little Mac laptops. I know you loved your 12-inch MacBook, not MacBook Pro, what they call PowerBook.
Yeah, and I used to have an 11-inch MacBook Air when that was a thing.
Yep, and so did I, and I loved having those little portable light laptops. I had a MacBook, actually, with the dodgy keyboard and the one USB port, and I didn't mind that it was that slow. I mean, it got really hot and the fan spun up because it was Intel, so having one of these, phone-grade processors that are actually not that a million miles away from being a good multitasking computer chip anyway, I think is fine. The price is important though. I think you're going to want $650, $750, something like that for it to be relevant.
This has got to be a machine that's priced to sell. And they also do a similar version of this in the iPad, don't they? In the base level iPad, you get an A16 chip. I'm assuming that will get refreshed this year as well at some point. So you can see Mac OS, iPad OS having that lower, non-suffixed machine. So I think it could be called MacBook, and it just has a bog standard chip in it. I think it'll be more than good enough for most people. So I think this is quite exciting. I think they should do it. This would be a laptop I'd buy, say, for my wife, who is using the Office suite general browsing. She's got an M1 at the moment. It's fine. And the A18 Pro is probably going to be better than her M1 when it launches.
I think in America they sell like an M1 with 8 gigs of RAM for like $650, $700, something like that.
Yeah, only in Walmart.
Yeah.
For some reason they've got some partnership with Walmart, and maybe that has tested the market.
I got to think Apple are looking over there going, oh, that's interesting, because we've linked to Jason Snell's article as well. They can't sell the M1 forever. It's eventually going to go away, even though it has been a stellar chip. And I've been running my work MacBook as an M1 MacBook Pro. I barely noticed that I've gone back 3 chip generations from the M3 I'm used to, or the M4 I'm recording this on, to be quite honest. For most tasks, it's more than good enough for that.
Yeah, I agree with you. My wife is not once turned around and gone, my M1 MacBook is too slow. It's fine. It's a great device. The only bit I miss on it is it's got the slightly older design. I quite like the new design of the hardware, that is. So I think this is a no-brainer. When I first heard about it, I thought, I can't see Apple doing that, but the more I've thought about it and how good the M4 is, feels like the right thing to do, have a bit more of the market.
And the compromises I wouldn't mind. And the other thing that occurred to me that I haven't seen many people talk about in the articles is if they push the MacBook Air up a little bit, it can get a better display. So you could put a ProRes screen, a 90Hz, 120Hz screen in the MacBook Air then, which is, I think, the biggest knock against the MacBook Air. Everything else, the chip is good enough, it's got enough RAM these days, storage is still a bit weak, but that's ever is it so with Apple products. The screen is a problem. It's not got the brightness, it's not got the resolution that a MacBook Pro has got. So if you push it up a little bit, give it a better screen, and slide something else underneath it, they could shift all the old rubbish, inverted commas, screens that are in the MacBook Air, make the MacBook Air a little more premium, and it sort of justifies it. And then it's just from the parts bin you've already got. Slap some interesting colours like we've got on the current generation of base model iPhones, and you're off to the races with this thing.
Yeah, look, I've got the MacBook Air. The screen's good. Especially compared to most PCs, it's a really good screen, but it's not anywhere near as good as the Pro MacBooks that they do. And I kind of agree with you. It gives you then 3 tiers to play with. The Pro gets the new hotness, and then it should filter down the lineup. Because I do want a skinny laptop that has I would like it to have a better screen. I agree with you. It's the weakest component at the moment.
Yeah, and if you look at the rest of their lineup, you've got iPhone Pro, and the rumoured iPhone Air, which is going to be the super thin one. iPad, yeah. iPad Air, iPad Pro, Mac Pro.
They could call this the MacBook E.
They could, but why wouldn't you just use MacBook? It's right there.
I completely agree with you. I was just chucking out the E because obviously that's what they've used on the new iPhone.
It works on the iPhone because it's 16E. I don't think the MacBookie works in the same way.
I agree with you. I think they should just call it MacBook. Have the base model, the Air model, and then the Pro model, and then do that on all your lineups: the iPhone, the iPad, And then if you want a sub-regular model, you have the Mini, which is just an odd device because it's not necessarily slower or worse. It's just smaller.
Yeah. So I'm for this. I'm going to reserve my judgment till it appears because we've been here 18 months before. But at the same time, there's actually strings for it in the device release lists that we've seen within Xcode and the OSs. So it's obviously a thing that's going to happen. But
there's a lot more smoke around this fire now.
Yeah, there is. And I think the MacBook has been gone for such a long time now that those who have a bit of a taint, a bit of a whiff of a bad product because of the keyboard, because of the low-powered processor, and because of the one USB port, hopefully that's gone away a little bit. Please, Apple, give it at least 2.
This will be the device that they wanted to have made all those years ago, I think. So I'm optimistic for this.
Fair enough. So we'll wait and see what happens. App of the week?
Let's do it.
App of the week this week is called Syncthing. So, as you know, I've been running a Nextcloud little server for a while, which meant I had to punch a bit of a hole in my firewall, which makes me uncomfortable. I never like doing that. It was fine, it was patched, it was up to date and all the rest of it, but it never made me all that happy. What I realised in Nextcloud was all I was using it for was for a live folder that was there all the time on whatever device I went to. So I went digging around to see if there was an option that I wouldn't have to have a firewall open to do so, and I found a thing called Syncthing. So Syncthing runs on rsync. You might be familiar with rsync from having NASs and things like that. It's a fairly low-level file protocol that all it does is it does one big backup, one big file transfer, and then it looks for changes. And Syncthing runs on rsync. It's a very simple server that runs on every machine you add to it. I created one Syncthing folder on my NAS, made one very slight security change to that, and then every other device now has one folder that syncs among them, including my phone, my laptops, my Linux box, my 2 Linux boxes, and everything. So now I have an almost instantly syncing folder across all my Macs, done very, very simply. It's a terrific little piece of software.
It sounds quite cool. It's a good name, Syncthing. I like that.
Yep. It runs, you can access it as a sort of web server kind of approach to it on your browser, so you can nominate what folder you want to sync. You can say whether there's a primary one. Every device you have to manually go in and say, yeah, I accept this device, and then you need to say, yes, I accept to sync this folder with it. So the security on it's quite good as well. It seems to work almost magically across firewalls and things like that in many cases. My phone, I do need to flip on my Tailscale connection to get it to sync from time to time, but it's not that big a deal. It's far more effective and efficient than iCloud syncing. You know, I flip on Tailscale and it syncs instantly. It doesn't sit there doing other things, so I've been really pleased with it. It's a neat little service.
Yeah, that's quite cool. You're really going off grid. That's quite interesting.
Well, you know, I like my open source stuff as well. So the fact that you can get it on every platform, Android, iOS, Mac, Linux, Windows, it's there, everything. You know, for the viewers, if you look at what's on the base Syncthing package, it's on every operating system known to man, I think.
Yes, it's a very impressive list, isn't it? All the OSs that they support and chips. Fair play.
Yep. And for me, I installed it with Homebrew. I did brew install Syncthing. I had to copy and paste one line that the Homebrew installer put onto me to start it as a service. So it starts when your Mac starts every time. So even if you haven't logged in, it's running in the background. It runs in user space, so you don't even need to be root to do it, which is pretty cool. It's a neat little program. I'm really impressed with it.
Cool.
Syncthing. What's your thing of the week? And I guessed, I just want to say before, I guessed what it was going to be.
Yeah, so I spent 2 days at Silverstone at the weekend, and I had a really good time. Would recommend. So that was my thing of the week, just something that I went and did, not related to the podcast, but just had a great time there, great atmosphere. I actually did park and ride, and you know what? Fair play, very well organised. In, out, really well done. They had a lot of people to move around this relatively small area of land, and they did a really good job of it. So I would recommend Silverstone to anybody that's into a little bit of F1. It is busy though on race day. Apparently there was like 500,000 people there or something stupid. It was insane. But really good day out. And afterwards I randomly bumped into Colin Fairs and shook his hand because he was watching the band play.
Who's Colin Fairs?
YouTuber that dug all the tunnels under his garden. Have you never heard of Colin Fairs?
Never heard of Colin Fairs.
Never heard of Colin Fairs. So he's a YouTuber who started off digging like a bunker in his garden. You know, he used to be like a plumber or welder or something, and then started off YouTubing. He's done incredibly well, and basically underneath his house, a semi-detached house, he's pretty much dug out all the earth, and he's recently done a Bond-style drive where you drive your car in and it will go down on a lift and turn around in his bunker, and then you can walk from his front bunker to his middle bunker to his back, all underground. It's quite cool. And he also did like a hot tub in a convertible car, so you're sat in the hot tub driving around, and he's made bikes and various other engineering things that he's just done. I don't know a lot about him. My son's quite into him. But anyway, he was just randomly at Silverstone.
Oh, there you go. I'm glad you met Colin first. Is he more or less famous than Charlie Ireland, who you met about this time last year?
Probably less famous, because I think Clarkson Farm hits a much bigger demographic. But in YouTuber creator space, he's very big in the YouTuber creator space. And I don't even watch anything on YouTube, and yet I knew who this guy was. Like I say, largely through my 13-year-old son.
There you go. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
I think so. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac at mastodon.scot. He's also on Blue Sky, and he's at g5maniac at bsky.social. I'm on Mastodon. I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to the website and clicking on the link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.